Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear?
To get more involved with one another, not just church on Sundays, and to be more personable, be one big family that's loving and caring.
These families bringing us together is going to bring us closer as a church, and everybody's going to know each other more intimately.
Church families should give us a chance to open up, be vulnerable with each other, and grow and learn to be able to lean on other Christians in hard times.
Let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And oh, someone will come running, and I know they'll take you home.
I am Crystal Leader.
I'm Jason Leader.
Hey, I am Sarah Mickelson.
I'm Rob.
I'm Darren Ask.
And I'm Lindsay Ask.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is my wife Wendy.
My name is Divine,
And I'm Jaira.
and we're siblings.
Okay, hi. My name is Linda. My husband Paul will be alongside me.
I'm Joey Peterson.
Hey, I'm Andy, and this is Tears on the Way of Hudson.
Tears on my wife Hudson.
Hey, I'm Andy.
Even when the
and
dark
this is my wife,
comes
Tears
crashing
on
through,
the Hudsons.
when you need a friend to carry you,
We're Cassandra and Nathan Mervick.
when you're broken
Nolan.
on the
I'm Alex.
My name is Emily Vasley.
Alright, we are Logan and Emily Henry.
So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around, you will be found.
It's important because we get into each other's lives and we can get into the messy parts and we can talk about the good things that are happening and celebrate with each other, pray each other through some hard things, and we know we can go to each other during those times, and it's just really encouraging and uplifting, and it's nice to cover each other in prayer.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there?
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matty Taus. I get to be one of the pastors on staff here at Epiphany Station.
And I'm Mary. I also get to be one of the pastors here at Epiphany Station.
And we get this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about church families. Now, depending on how long you've been around Epiphany, you may or may not know that like, over the last few months, this is really what we've been focusing the majority of our time and energy and effort toward, is seeking to be the church in the way that it was actually meant to be in the first place, that maybe gets drifted away from or gets forgotten about. And what we noticed is over the last couple of years that for us to be the church, we actually have to know one another. We have to be known and to know one another, and we can't know everyone. And so what we're seeking to do is just specifically take the time to find everyone their own church family. A place where they are actually known, a place where people do know them, interact with them, love them, engage them, encourage them, know them, disciple them. That's been our goal over these last few months. And so we approached a handful of people, really just kind of like the beta test group. We didn't know if they would survive. It went okay, like everyone's still with us. But the goal was to see if these people would be willing to pastor church families. Instead of seeing as a staff of 3 pastors and a manager of operations is being able to develop out 10, 15, 20 and beyond church family pastors that will be willing to pastor a church family. That's what we've been doing for the last few months, and now we're getting to the very exciting time.
Yes, we're getting to the very exciting time, which means details, which are really good details. So starting September 12th, Holly, if you want to go ahead and hit that slide there, September 12th is when we want to launch these. And so we're getting down to the point where we want to make sure everyone is getting into a church family. Right now we have 13 church family pastors, and we really don't want more than 10, but we will do that if we need to. So that means 150 people. It's still not enough for how many people call Epiphany Station home, but it's a good start. And so the details are, people are asking us, what is this even going to look like? What does this mean? I don't know what church families are. And so what it really is you, like you saw on there, it's where we're going to connect with each other. It's where we're going to really find discipleship. It's where we're going to find family. It's where we're going to find where we take care of each other and we're there for each other. And so we want this group of people to meet together at least once a week. And I know some people are like, man, once a week? Yes, once a week. And this is family. This is real. This is when we make it a priority that we're going to be there for each other. And meeting once a week is super important. So we're going to get together once a week. And what we're going to do during that time is we're going to actually open up the Bible, like the physical Bible, and we're actually going to talk about it. We're actually going to read it. And we're actually going to dig in. And what does God really mean about this? And how does this relate to me in my life? And what I love about these groups is that we learn more about each other. We get to hear what God is doing in each other and what God is speaking. And for some of us, that might mean like, I don't know what God's voice sounds like. And then another person in that church family gets to say, oh, hey, let me help you. And so it's a lot of just helping each other grow in the Lord and being there for each other. So once a week they get together, but not just that they're there for each other throughout that week. We're real family. And so when someone's in a crisis, when someone needs someone to help with something, that family is going to be there for each other, just like a real family. And so I think that was mostly those details. Okay, so here we go, down to this part. Everyone should have one of these yellow cards. It's called our Take Your Next Step connection cards. And so what I want you to do, now that you know some details about this, I would like you to write down your name at this very moment. We'll take 10 seconds. And you can write down your name, and I'm going to ask you some questions about that. So go ahead. This is the part where we look to watch and see people. And after you're done writing down your name, if you want to just write down your phone number, we'd really appreciate that. I know we try to make sure we have everybody's contact information, but that doesn't always work. So we want to make sure we get that tonight. And so the next part on that, where it says prayer request, question, response, we would love it if you would just write on there, yes or no, that you want to be a part of a church family. Yes, you want to be, and then what we're going to do with that, those yeses, we're going to bring them to our church family pastors, and we're going to say, hey, here's someone that wants to be a part of a family. Who's feeling God leading you to that person? And it's a really exciting time because we've already had several of those, and so it's been so fun to see where people are like, God's really drawing me to those people, and it's fun to see them connect and get together. And if your answer is no, that's okay. You can write down no. I know some people are already a part of something that's kind of like this. You can write that down if you want to so you don't seem mean. And so go ahead and write no, or not at this time, or I still have more questions. And so if that is you, you still have more questions, Pete and myself are going to be at the information table right after this experience to answer any questions you might have. And if you don't want to do it tonight, just call us, message us, text us, whatever you want to do. By your phone number, if you just want to write down your preference, if you want us to text or call too, that would be very helpful.
If you're watching online and you're with us, and we would love you to drop anything that you want in the chat to let us know that you would like to be part of a church family. We can get those set up kind of geographically as well where people are, and then we can kind of personal message you to keep everything private as far as your details and stuff. But everything that we've been doing over these last few months, the whole intention behind it is to see the church strengthen towards what it is supposed to be. A lot of the video that you saw there of those people gathered in a room, those are the church family pastors that have been giving up there every single Monday night for the last few weeks and are going to give up a chunk of time every single week to meet together before they meet with their church families. We've been able to do a lot of theology stuff, how to deal with certain things, how to actually have a healthy church family so these people are trained and prepared. We've been putting the work and the effort in because genuinely, this is what we think we need. We don't seek to be arrogant and know how to solve all problems, all issues, and know exactly what every person needs, but we believe this is what the church needs. The church needs family. We're not putting down Sunday mornings. We're not putting down gathering together. We're not going to stop doing that. That's a piece of what we do to celebrate and worship our God. But if you're looking for church, this is where you're going to find it in the way that God has intended it to be. Maybe closer to what God has intended it to be. So as we just wrap this little piece up now, we want to actually gather in all of those cards. If you've written anything on them, if you've not, if you've got blanks, what I want you to do is I want you to send them down the row. And so if you're over here, send them into this aisle. If you're over here, you can send them that way, or you can send them that way. If you're on this side, you can send them down the row, and Mary's going to come and run down and pick them all up.
That's what I'm going to do. Okay,
That's
perfect.
what you're going to do.
Before I do that, I just have a couple quick reminders. Our launch weekend of going back to AM services are Sunday, September 12th, 9:30 and 11. Super pumped about that. And then also the Saturday before that, we're doing an outreach at the college. The college has said we can come to their yard and have food and get to know the college students and welcome them here. So if you want to be a part of that, we have a sign up. I forget what that's called. Thank you, Sign Up Genius. Thank you. It's getting filled up, super exciting. You guys want to be part of it, but there's still some more slots. We need some people who will actually grill the hot dogs. So if that's you, if you like doing that, that'd be great. So, okay, I promise
Awesome,
I'll be
good
fast.
job. That was
Okay.
good. Yeah. That was a lot. Like, I just want to appreciate that right now. Like, even if you're in person or you're online, like, that was a lot that we just kind of wanted to communicate with you. And we are trying to communicate better. But so much has happened over the last couple of months that it's felt like people have been in limbo and they didn't know what we were doing. Now is the time we can answer all of your questions. So if you do have any more at the end of our experience, Pete and Mary will be at that info desk at the end. How's that whole card handing back thing going? Is it going well? Looks like a well-oiled machine. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is, like I said, it's Matty Taus, and I get to be the lead pastor here at Epiphany Station. And I get to walk us into our fifth and final conversation in this teaching series called Start Again. Now, the whole idea of this Start Again series has been to understand what most desperately needs to be understood for every single one of us. If we are going to understand a relationship with God to any degree, what we have to understand is how it actually happens and what it actually looks like. Too much of our lives can be kind of wrapped up in all of these ideas that just maybe aren't biblical, or just these notions and these experiences that weren't the best. What we want to understand is, what does God do when we say that we will belong to him? Our core text for this teaching series has been 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17, which says this: that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, and a new life has begun. Now, what that promises, and what we've been unpacking for these last 4 conversations, has been that anyone, absolutely anyone who would choose to belong to Christ can have their life completely restarted, redone, refreshed, and renewed. Completely and totally redeemed. Now, that's no small thing to try and understand how and when and who and why these things happen. It's why we've had several conversations about it. If you've missed any of those conversations, you can go to our website, Epiphany Station. You can go to our YouTube channel, Epiphany Station. Heck, if you're watching online, like right now, you can pause. I can do a stupid face for you to pause on, and then you can actually go watch them now before we even continue. That's the beauty of technology. But the reason we've had to do this, the reason we've spent so much time on like this one thing, this one verse, is because of how essential it is for us to understand loving God and loving people. To get context for it and what it looks like, we've actually gone way, way back into some of the beginnings of God's interactions with mankind to unpack it and understand it. To understand, as we look back into the beginnings of God's interaction with people, what it would actually be like for people to have their lives completely restarted. So we look far back into the book of Exodus. It's where we get some of the most famous interactions with God and mankind: Egypt, Moses, plagues, Red Sea being parted, stuff like that. All of it intentionally a foreshadowing of what God was going to do for the whole world. That he was actually going to give rescue opportunity to every single person who could then choose to belong to Christ. Now, of all of these conversations that we've had through this teaching series of Start Again, like who here has like been here or seen like all 4 of them? Like, has anyone been there? No. There's a few. That's reasonable. You guys get yourself a cookie. I don't know where you're getting a cookie from, but you've earned yourselves one. For the rest of us, I want to give us a quick recap of where we've been, to give us context for how this conversation really does come to an end. So if you take the book of Exodus and you take chapters 1 through 15, it starts with the understanding that all of God's people have slipped into slavery. They've actually gone through centuries of subjugation and pain and suffering, and they've called out to God to be rescued. So God calls out to Moses, this action, this moment where there is a bush that is on fire that God speaks through to Moses and said, I have this message of hope for you, for my people, take it. Moses takes it and he is met with doubt, and he's met with anger, and he's met with frustration from the people. So then he takes it to Pharaoh, where he's met with more doubt. He's actually laughed at, and actually Pharaoh makes life a lot worse for everyone involved because of it. And then we see plagues, and we see Passover, and we see the offer of freedom, and then we see that they are allowed to walk out, and then we see that they're chased. We see that they're going to be destroyed. We see the Red Sea rescue, and on the other side of it, Exodus 15, the song of gratitude, the song of praise to God for rescuing them. Then we get Exodus 16 through 19, which you could describe as a song of ingratitude, in which immediately, very quickly, the water doesn't taste right, and the food's not right, and this isn't right, and that's wrong. They have their first fight, and even there's a beautiful moment in there, which I don't know how many of you have in-laws, but Moses' in-law, Jethro, kind of leans over and tells him he's doing it wrong and how he should be doing everything different, which some of us can appreciate. And then, at the end of Exodus 19, the people get to a mountain, a somewhat seemingly an unimportant mountain at the time, but a mountain comes to be known as Mount Sinai. And you get to Exodus 20. Now, that was a super quick survey recap of Exodus 1 through 19. But the reason it's so important is because Exodus 20 is so important. Exodus 20, whether you believe in Jesus or not, has probably had more impact in forming and shaping the whole world than any other text. For a Bible knowledge silver star, can anyone tell me what happened in Exodus 20, Mount Sinai? Anyone? No one's going to be brave? Dang it, I was expecting. 10 Commandments. Thanks, Katie. Silver star. 10 Commandments. Just because you didn't get a cookie. Now, the 10 Commandments are given at Exodus 20 at Mount Sinai. And this, in shorthand, is what God says to the people through it. God gave the people all these instructions. I am the Lord your God who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery. You must not have any other God but me. You must not make yourself an idol. You must not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Honor your father and mother. You must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely against your neighbor, and you must not covet anything belonging to your neighbor. That's the quick skim through the 10 Commandments. And it was an absolute first in history. It was an absolute first because this is the first time that something is actually chiseled down between God and his people as an agreement. With the first people who are going to be this covenant community, this is the first time it goes to stone. This is the first time the people can read it, the first time it's going to be kept. And this idea of this covenant, this agreement between God and the people, that this is actually what we're going to do. If we skim by that, because we've all heard of the 10 Commandments before, we can miss some pieces of it that actually deserve some questions to be asked. Like if you take into context and scope everything that's happened in Exodus, like even if you go a little bit further back, and you get into Abraham, you get into Noah, you get into Adam and Eve. There's so much there of God seeking to declare to his people that they are his people, that they can screw up a whole big ton and he's still going to have mercy and he's still going to have grace and he's still going to be there for them. All that happens. And then yet at this point, this is the point that God starts to lay down the rules. He starts to lay down the law. He starts to lay down the thing that is going to form and shape the whole world as we know it. And the question is why? Why was it so important now? Seemingly in the story of Exodus, the rescues happened. Like the start again has already been done. Why is it now time to start laying down the agreement of the kind of covenant and kind of agreement community that they're going to have? In short, it is simply because God's people aren't done. They're actually just getting started. How many of you have heard of the Oregon Trail? Now you can put your left hand up if you've heard of it, right hand if you've played the video game. There we go, it's good. Now, there's a certain niche window there of age which you play Oregon Trail to try and get out doing real schoolwork. And I never grew up playing Oregon Trail because I'm not from around here. We played a game called Boston Tea Party where you had to try and catch the boxes as they were throwing them over. No, it's not real either. But I actually first read about the Oregon Trail like this year. First time I'd ever heard about it or known about it. I like to read a lot about the founding of America and Canada and kind of like the expansion of the West and like fur trapping companies and all these kind of things, and I like that. And I started to read about the trails that people would take from Independence, and they would head all the way over to Oregon. And one of the cool things that I didn't know, that I don't know if you know, you might do, you're smarter than me, is that before they set off, oftentimes these groups, these wagon trains, these people, before they would set off on the 2,000-mile journey and go through 3 distinct ecological biomes, before facing battles and famine and drought and disagreement, they would actually create a covenant. They would write one up. It was akin to a constitution. And in it would say who was part of the group, and where have they come from, and where are they going, and what path do they agree to take together, and who is in charge, and how are they going to deal with their problems. And it was easy to see some that would succeed and get to where they were supposed to be going tended to have this kind of covenant, this constitution agreement, and those who didn't often disbanded before they got there, being overcome by infighting, rebellion, and just dispersing. Now, I look at the 10 Commandments and I think, what are they if not a constitution? They are a description. They are, at the very beginning, God declares who they are, where they've come from, who they belong to. He says, I am the Lord your God who has brought you out of slavery in Egypt. And then he goes into saying, and this is how now you will live in light of that reality. And the reason it was needed in that moment as they were at Mount Sinai is because they were at a pivotal changing point. They had not completely succeeded in escaping. They had not completely succeeded in the absolute finished idea of rescue and complete again. They were just getting started. Now, one of the myths that I thought was true about a relationship with God is once you have been saved from your sin through faith in Jesus Christ, you're done. You have arrived. I was baptized. I was confirmed. I've got a little Bible at home that's signed by the bishop of such and such a place that says I'm all set. And I thought that was the restart. I thought that was the journey done. The problem with that myth is it sells you something not true. Any restart with God, any life with God in which he saves you from your sin and starts a relationship with you is just that. It's a start. As our core text says, it's a new life that's just begun. And if new life has just begun, it means that there is something to come on from it. There is a journey that is going to continue. And God's people, from the moment they became God's people, have been moving on a journey. For generations, for centuries and millennia, God's people have been continuing to move independently and collectively. Because when we choose this new life with God, it is a brand new direction. It is a direction that goes against the flow of the rest of the world. It is walking in a new direction. It's walking in a new identity and with a brand new covenant. And we do it together. We do it together because God has provided for God's people, God's people. God's people are not a series of persons. We're a people. We're not a people for casual acquaintance and sitting still and getting comfy. We're a people who have been called out to go and to move on a journey that is not easy. A journey that is always going to be faced with difficulty and battle and famine and drought and hardship. And so therefore, a covenant is needed to say this is who we are and who we belong to and how we are now going to live in the face of that. And so you get Exodus 20, and then you get Exodus 20 through chapters 22, in which God goes on to say, hey, this is how you're going to now live differently together. How you're going to go through difficulty together. How you're going to love God and love people together. He even says in it, here's how you're going to take care of vulnerable people together. You're going to take care of outsiders together. Here's how you're going to take care of problems together. And then Moses gives the covenant agreement to the people, and they all agree and say, yes, this is exactly what we want to do. And then Moses goes back to talk to God for 40 days. And so you get Exodus 23 through 31 at that point, in which God spends a great deal of time and detail telling Moses to make sure that the people, his people, make his presence the focus. That him with them will be the most important thing that they will ever set their sights on, and they will never take their sights off him. He describes a tent that he wants built and stocked and staffed, which is going to be the location in the center of all things where he is going to be, to make sure that his people do not forget who is there, who they belong to. While God is saying this to Moses, you get to Exodus 32. For the Bible knowledge gold star, does anyone want to tell me what happens in Exodus 32? Yes, Jalen. The golden calf, gold star for Jalen. Everyone treat him like he's better than everyone else. Now, while all this is going on, Moses isn't down yet. While this is all going on, the people are kind of getting to that point. It's like, oh, it was good to get out of Egypt. That was good. We like that. But now God has been quiet for a while. Moses has been gone for quite some time. We should probably get ourselves another god. And so they come together and they're going to make themselves another god out of gold. Now, the interesting thing about that is they gathered together golden items that God gave them as they left Egypt. And they used them to create a golden calf, a small cow. Aaron, second in command of the whole thing, Moses' right-hand man, is in fact the one who makes it. Read with me the ridiculousness of Exodus 32. Aaron took the gold and melted it down and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, "O Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Aaron saw how excited the people were, so he built an altar in front of the calf. Then he announced, "Tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord." The people got up early the next morning to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. After this, they celebrated with feasting and drinking, and they indulged in pagan revelry. Now, this right here is the reason that the Bible is so thick. The reason that the Bible is thick is because God has to repeat himself over and over and over again, often to the same people. And he has to make it clear again, abundantly clear again, remove all heresy and idols again. You see, what happens here is the problem that we all have, the very real problem, is that we are plagued with a terribly short memory. When you look at the first covenant community of God, the first ones out of Egypt, how far did they get? They didn't get anywhere. They hadn't even moved yet. The gap between the greatest rescue of all time and them fully renunciating the commands of God is laughably short. Like the gap between all of those miracles and all of those signs and all of those wonders to them not even believing he's there anymore. The gap between him laying out a plan and a covenant, an agreement for this to be the people through which God is going to show his holiness and his greatness to all the world, and them enjoying pagan revelry. Month and 10 days. That's how long it took. Now, it can be in vogue to give the Israelites a really tough time. But the moral is not that God's first people were God's worst people. The relevance of all of Exodus, beyond the foreshadowing of Christ, that we will be in need of rescue, is the tendency we see in it that God's people are always going to have a likelihood, always going to kind of feel free, and sometimes even joyously choose to forget him. It flies in the face of that idea that, well, if God did more, I'd believe in him. Like if God did more miracles, I would believe. If God directly came down and handed commandments, I would believe. God's people on their own cannot maintain their own belief. Rules don't get it done. Miracles don't get it done. Us on our own, we seemingly continuously don't get it done. And in this moment here where we're faced with what seems like an impossibility of maintaining our faith in our God, these are where the words of Christ carve through time with the most hopeful thing and most important thing for us to understand. When it comes to starting again, when it comes to relationship with our God, exactly what we said last week as well. When the disciples came to him and said, "Who in the world can be saved?" Jesus looked at them intently and said, "Humanly speaking, it's impossible, but with God, everything is possible." To grasp this, starting again, this relationship with our God, is to grasp and understand that we need him. And that we need him always. The secret here, the truth here, the reality here is to start a new start with God means that it never stops. We never stop coming to dependence on God. We never stop needing to be rescued from our sin. We never stop needing to be saved. And that right there is our core text, understood, unpacked. It's because that's what it means to belong. Permanently, continuously to belong to Christ. The old life gone and the new life begun. We will always need it. And our God is the God who is always there to receive us. Jesus Christ came to earth to die on a cross and was resurrected, not so that one day we could realize we were kind of bad and get saved for it. It was so that we would realize that we need that kind of saving and rescue every single day. That we need to belong to him. We have this great God that seeks to offer us this opportunity to belong to him. Not out of subjugation, but actually in freedom to belong to him. And so to start again and to stay started again, what it actually means is that we would start again with all of us belonging to all of him. Like you take the good bits and they belong to him. And the bad bits belong to him. The trials belong to him and the blessings belong to him. Your marriage belongs to him. Your kids belong to him. Your house belongs to him. Your worries belong to him. And your doubts, him. See, all of this, because to depend on him is to belong to him, is to consistently seek him out. And if you've ever been taught that there comes a point in your faith where you're mature enough to stand on your own, I'm sorry, that's not true. If you've ever been led to believe that you're the one that's supposed to have this, that you're supposed to shoulder your faith, that you're supposed to be the strong one, that you're supposed to have all the answers for all things, it's not true. If we or I have ever led you to believe that starting again with God will be a one-done deal and everything's going to be rainbows and butterflies after the fact, I'm truly sorry, because that's not true. In fact, if we're going to stay out of Egypt, like if we're going to come out of Egypt and we're going to stay out of Egypt and we're going to stay out of slavery, we need Jesus. If we're going to be rescued daily from our desire, our intention towards sin, we need Jesus. If we're going to be transformed over and over again, changed toward perfection, we need Jesus. In fact, there will never not be a time that we don't need Jesus. We will always be in need. And to think anything else is what set the Egyptians up for such monumental failure and sets believers up to think everything's okay when it's not. We will never not need his word. We'll never not need his commands. We'll never not need to meet him in prayer. We'll never not need to worship him. We'll never not need his people. Because if anything, Exodus teaches us that when God's people get their eyes off God, even for a moment, they can be the ones, we can be the ones, carving out an image of gold made of the very riches that God gave us in the first place. And I appreciate that this is possibly not the most happy-go-lucky conversation you've ever had in church. But if this is hitting you different, like if this is like legit hitting somewhere like home, that maybe there is a golden cow somewhere that has started to take worship, that God gave you something, that he delivered you, that he gave you rescue, and for some reason now your life is devoted to something else, it's maybe hitting for the right reason. Like if it's hitting maybe that your covenant that you agreed to God of how you were going to live life in light of what he'd done to rescue you and save you from your sin, if that's hitting different, maybe it's hitting for a reason. Maybe if you once dedicated your life to Christ and right now it just isn't. Maybe that's why we're here. Maybe that's why we're having this conversation. There's no intent, no desire to shame anyone. But to remind us, absolutely. To see our trajectory actually go towards our God, definitely. And so that each and every single one of us might experience this thing, this idea, this promise of new life in Christ, that is the intent of it all. This entire series, all of these conversations. But what needs to happen is we need to get back to needing him. We need to stop putting him on a shelf like we're done with him and he's done his job and that's all we can ask for right now. We need to get back to the place where we see that we need him every single day and to build into your life whatever you need to remind you to need him. Whatever is going to keep you locked in and focused. God took time to say, build a tent that you can see every single day. God took time to put a pillar of fire and smoke in the sky that they could see day and night. God has done things throughout generations, throughout churches to help them remember what the point actually is, who the point actually is, and who they belong to. And if we want to start again, if we want to stay away from the things that we've declared we don't want any part of anymore, I feel like this is the thing that we actually need. We need to get back to needing him. We need to get back to our eyes on him, focused entirely on him, allowing the fact that the rest of this life is not as important as our view of him and his view of us. Now, if any of this is hitting you different tonight, and you need to talk to someone about that, at the end of our experience, I'm going to be down here. If you want to have a conversation about that, if I can pray for you in any way, shape, or form, and if I am talking to someone, just if you'd be willing to wait, that'd be great. I don't want you walking out on a conversation that God might want you to have tonight. But if you're ready, like you genuinely want to have your life like lasered in, focused in, desirous of God, not going to be distracted, not going to be shifted, not going to be shaken. You want that for you want that for your family, you want that. Then I want to encourage us to actually take time to do that. Very rarely do we take time to devote ourselves back to God in our weekly, in our monthly lives. And so I want to do something that might seem a little bit weird. It might seem a little bit weird, and it even might seem a little bit uncomfortable. And I just want to let you know that for God's people, it's not something that's uncomfortable. It's something that's necessary. I actually want to invite, as we pray together, I want to invite you to kneel. Now, I grew up in church where you kneel and you sat and you knelt and you stood and you knelt again, and it didn't really hit why you were doing that. Apart from there was those nice padded cushions, we don't have those. And maybe that's something that we've been missing, is being able to kneel more often. Because when we kneel, it is an appreciation of who our King is. It's an appreciation of who we're worshiping, who we're loving, and who we belong to. And so if you can, as I pray for us, I actually want to invite you to kneel. If you're at home, online, watching, I want to invite you to kneel. I want us to pray together to our God in a posture that declares that he is in charge and he is our King. If you don't want to do this, don't feel pressure to do it. No one's looking. It's why we keep the lights dark. If you don't want to kneel, don't kneel. Maybe that's something you'll do later on. Maybe tonight, maybe in your own time. But just as a church, I want us to be an entire church that is so devoted to our God that we can kneel. and know that we're not in charge, know that we're not in control, know that we don't stand on our own, and that we actually need him. And so I invite you now, if you want to pray with me, to go ahead and pray. If you want to kneel, to go ahead and kneel. I want to lead us through a prayer that Paul gave to the church in Ephesians that I think is exactly what we need. When I think of all this, I fall to my knees and I pray to the Father, the creator of everything, in heaven and on earth. I pray that from his glorious, unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his Spirit. Then Christ will make his home in your hearts as you trust in him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. And may you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is. May you experience the love of Christ, though it is too great to understand fully. Then you will be made complete with all the fullness of life and power that comes from God. Now all glory to God, who is able, through his mighty power at work within us, to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think. Glory to him in the church and in Christ Jesus through all generations, forever and ever. Amen.